The Senate will now come back to order. At this time, I'd ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber, which I don't see very many of those. The chair would like to recognize the senator that has a son named Greg that just made the dean's list at Kennesaw State University. Certainly, he picked up those study habits from his famous father. Chair would like to recognize the Rules Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am proud of my son on the dean's list at Kennesaw State, the home of the Owls. And I'm not sure where he got it. It had to be his mom. Moment in history, 1892. The Coca-Cola Company, the world's greatest soft drink, was incorporated in Atlanta, Georgia. About, I think, 6-7 years ago, we were involved in the greatest snowstorm in Atlanta at this time. That Saturday Night Live made a big funny thing about it, and that actually wasn't too bad. And also in 1936, United States Baseball Hall of Fame elects its first members: Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, later on Walter Johnson, Hank Aaron, and soon number 8 of the Florida Marlins. Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
You won't see number 8 in the Hall of Fame. I can assure you of that. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 43 by Senators Brass of the 28th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 33-6-4 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to the enumeration of unfair methods of competition and unfair or deceptive
Insurance
acts.
and labor.
Senate Bill 44 by Senators Thompson of the 14th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 40-2-86 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to special license plates promoting or supporting certain worthy agencies, funds, or nonprofit
Public
corporations.
safety.
Senate Bill 45 by Senators Thompson of the 14th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to general provisions of professions and businesses so as to provide for individuals who move
Regulated industries.
Senate Bill 48 by Senators Burke of the 11th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to health so as to authorize certain medical personnel to administer vaccines, certain public health emergencies.
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 47 by Senators Gooch of the 51st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 33 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to Georgia's Special Needs Scholarship Act so as to revise 2 prior school years.
Education and youth.
Senate Bill 48 by Senators Dolezal of the 27th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to prestige license plates and ancestral plates for certain persons and vehicles so as to provide
Public safety.
Senate Bill 49 by Senators Dixon of the 45th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 8 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to standards and requirements for construction, alteration, etc. of buildings.
State and local government general.
Senate Resolution 36 by Senators Beach of the 21st and others, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to provide that members of the Board of Regents of the University System of Georgia, chosen from each congressional district of the state, shall be elected by members of the General Assembly.
Higher education.
Senate Resolution 37 by Senators Dolezal of the 27th and others, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to provide that members of the Senate shall serve 4-year terms of office, provide that members of the House of Representatives shall be limited to serving 6 consecutive
Government
terms of
oversight.
office. That completes the order, Mr. President.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please. And we are informed that we have none. Mr. Secretary, will you please read reports of the standing committees?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security has under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 11, do pass by substitute, respectfully submitted to Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd District Chair.
Mr. Secretary, will you read bills and resolutions for the second time?
Senate Bill 6 by Senator Albers of the 56 and others, Tax Credit Return on Investment Act of 2021 enact. Senate Bill 9 by Senator Anderson of the 24th and others, courts, the Columbia Judicial Circuit, and to be composed of Columbia County, create new judicial circuit for the state of Georgia. Senate Resolution 30 by Senator Cowsert of the 46th and others, the State Election Board, Matthew Mashburn, appoint. Please, your order.
All right, it's now time for our morning roll call. It is now time for our morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? The chair recognizes the senator from the 44th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 43rd and the senator from the 26th.
Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the morning roll call.
The majority leader has asked for unanimous consent to dispense with the morning roll call. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the morning roll call is dispensed with. It's now time for our morning devotional. I'd ask that all senators please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. I'm going to bang. It's now time for a morning devotional. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Doorkeepers, please secure the chamber at this time. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 36th to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Thank you. Well, I'm so happy our chamber is filling up here on a Friday morning, and so pleased to bring to you my pastor at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta. Reverend Terrence Strauss, who we'll hear from shortly, is the senior minister at what we call the UUCA, an historic church that goes back countless decades of pastoring and mentoring and gathering congregants here in the Atlanta area. She lives in Atlanta, and Reverend Strauss, with her husband James Richards III, he's a PR consultant and a musician, and he joins her gleefully and faithfully in the project of raising their 5-year-old twin boys. We hear about those boys on a regular basis from the sermons of our pastor. Reverend Strauss was raised in Chicago, and she migrated down to North Carolina, where she was educated at the Guilford School, a Quaker liberal arts school, Guilford College, you're familiar with it, in Greensboro, and worked then in the western area of North Carolina, a wide sector, with AIDS, the AIDS Project for Western North Carolina. She came to us after her education at the Union Theological Seminary in New York. You may take note that our recently elected U.S. Senator Pastor Raphael Warnock also received his advanced degrees at that very, very significant theological seminary in New York. Reverend Strauss has spent her time studying collective movements for racial, economic, and gender justice, and she brought that perspective to us. And she also adds that she spent a good deal of time studying why people don't act right in church, something we've all wondered about, right? She has been with our congregation in Atlanta since 2017 at a pivotal moment when our church is moving to a new location. We just completed a wonderful capital fund drive under her leadership, and in her 3 short years with us, she has made an incredible difference. I'm so happy and pleased to bring her to you today, and I'd like to ask Reverend Terrence Strauss to come and deliver our message. Reverend?
Thank you so much. That's great. Well, this is about the largest number of people that I have been in a room with in about 10 months. So it's a little surreal. Good morning. I'm so glad to be with you on this beautiful, chilly morning. I want to thank the Honorable Lieutenant Governor Duncan and Honorable Senator Nan Orrock for inviting me to share a word and a prayer with you this morning. We have a children's book we like to give new families who come into our doors called Unitarian Universalism is a very long name. And it is. I do hope you will check out our faith and our church sometime. We are proud to be an active part of the interfaith landscape of Georgia, and it really is an honor to be invited to speak with you and hopefully say something that will inspire your sacred service today. Being somewhat new to Georgia, I have to admit, I only recently learned of our state motto, which you already know. We said the words this morning: wisdom, justice, and moderation. Let us begin with wisdom. When the writer Toni Morrison won the Nobel Prize for Literature, she accepted the award by telling this story. Once upon a time, there was an old woman, or was it an old man? A guru, perhaps. I have heard this story, or one exactly like it, in the lore of several cultures. Once upon a time, there was an old woman, blind, wise. In the version I know, the woman is the daughter of slaves, Black, American, and lives alone in a small house outside of town. Her reputation for wisdom is without peer and without question. The honor she is paid and the awe in which she is held reach beyond her neighborhood to places far away. One day, the woman is visited by some young men who seem to be bent on disproving her clairvoyant wisdom and showing her up for the fraud they believe she is. Their plan is simple. They enter her house and ask the one question, the answer to which rides solely on her difference from them, a difference they regard as a profound disability, her blindness. They stand before her, and one of them says, "Old woman, I hold in my hand a bird. Tell me whether it is living or dead." She does not answer, and the question is repeated: "Is the bird I am holding living or dead?" Still, she doesn't answer. She is blind and cannot see her visitors, let alone what is in their hands. She does not know their color, gender, or homeland. She only knows their motive. The old woman's silence is so long, the young people have trouble holding their laughter. Finally, she speaks, and her voice is soft but stern. "I don't know," she says. "I don't know whether the bird you are holding is dead or alive. But what I do know is that it is in your hands. It is in your hands." Her answer can be taken to mean, if it is dead, you have either found it that way or you have killed it. If it is alive, you can still kill it. Whether it is to stay alive, it is your decision. Whatever the case, it is your responsibility. Friends, our state, and in fact, our precious democracy is a bird in your hands. Will you let it live? Let us consider that second word, justice. Throughout the Old and New Testament, our call to do justice is clear. Give justice to the weak and the fatherless, the psalmist tells us. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute, from Psalm 82. Learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, says the prophet Isaiah, and on and on. What a time we are all living in together. We find ourselves together here at a crossroads of crises. 10 months of a global pandemic, still reeling from a recent insurrection at our nation's capital. Our global climate changing with fearsome speed, and a national reckoning with the deep racial inequities still embedded within our society. A moment such as this calls for active hope, not passive assumptions of human progress, no, but a sense of urgency and action we shape with our own two hands in rooms like this one. What Unitarian minister Reverend Theodore Parker called the arc of the moral universe. He said, I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one, but from what I can see, it bends towards justice, but not without our hands. The good news is you are the right people here at the right time. We all are called to this moment. Our democracy and our community health is but a fragile bird, and it is you who hold its tender fate in your hands, in your wisdom. Will you let it live? We close with that final word, moderation. Like the young folk in our story, some may wonder if you have what it takes to protect the bird in the hand. Some may worry you do not have the gift of sight to see clearly all the troubles that plague us and all the knots we must untie to free the bird. But we call upon an active hope, knowing that God moves through all things, that we are all co-creators of a better world, creating not only heaven beyond, but slices of heaven right here on earth. That vision of the beloved community where everyone has enough and all are welcomed at the table of justice, whomever they love. Where we follow God's call to care for the most needy, the most fragile, those who are highest risk. As my colleague, Reverend William Barber, often says, the solutions to the crisis we face are not about right and left. This is about right and wrong. The true function of freedom is to free somebody else. So, how can you use your freedom and power here to free somebody else? This is what God is calling each of us to do, not only to care for the bird in our hand, but to let it fly. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. Holy mystery, God of many names, we ask for connection to those who are in deepest need right now. Lead us on your path toward greater empathy, not only for our friends and those we know, but those we don't yet know who may be struggling mightily in our communities. Oh, holy God, surround us with the mirror of truth, people who will humble us, who will call us out when we stray from wisdom, and your grace in those moments. Keep our hearts open and flexible. May we do your work, O God, in lifting up those who have fallen, lending a helping hand, thinking always of those who are hungry, homeless, sick on this day, suffering, lonely, and in need. In troubling times, O mystery, lead us on the path of deeper empathy towards healing for us all. We thank you, God, for the gift of this day and the chance to lead. May your holy word be written on the tablet of our hearts. May we go forth and do your sacred work, all the while seeking wisdom, bringing justice in the spirit of collaborative and loving moderation. Amen.
Senate will now come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? Chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning, colleagues. As you know, we do not have the doctors of the day actually coming in the chamber with us, but they are nonetheless here. The medical profession continues to serve us, and we're very grateful for that. And I'm grateful for my dear friend, Rana Muna, who is serving as our doctor of the day. Rana has been with us, I think this may be the third time now that I've had the pleasure of introducing her, but she began medical school at a little bit older than normal at age 45 at Mercer University School of Medicine. She completed her internal medicine residency at the Atlanta Medical Center. She specializes in health, wellness, and fitness, encouraging her patients to control hypertension and adult onset diabetes with a better lifestyle. She was president of the Bibb County Medical Society in 2013 and serves as a delegate to the annual AMA House of Delegates on an annual basis. She is one of the finest folks I know. She and her husband, Joseph Egloff, are just great friends, great constituents of mine. Joseph is a cattle farmer in the process of expanding his business in great ways that I'll tell you more about as the session goes on. So if you see her in the hallway, Dr. Muna, please give her a hello and thank her for what she's doing for us by coming to serve us at the Capitol. Thanks very much, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the minority leader for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate, and good morning. It appears over the course of this legislative session we are going to be talking about access to the voting booth, and that warrants a conversation about voter suppression. With some of the legislation that will be filed and legislation that has been filed, some of you are going to argue that voting reform is a matter of security. We have to prevent voter fraud, so we are going to add more ID requirements on top of the ID requirements we already have. We are going to eliminate drop boxes. But let me ask you to think about this. A long time ago, in order to vote, we had poll taxes. We had literacy tests. No one argues today that those tactics were not a form of voter suppression. It took the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to ensure these racist practices were eliminated. But do you know how poll taxes were justified at the time they were in place? The people who implemented poll taxes said that they were supposed to help regulate elections and prevent voter fraud by ensuring voters were tax-paying citizens. Sound familiar? When it comes to disenfranchisement, there is always a justification. But I'm here to tell you we're not buying it, and neither are the people of this state. Elected officials and even election board members in this state have been saying out loud that if we don't make it harder for people to vote, then Republicans won't win. In the last cycle, we had multiple audits, multiple recounts, and unbelievable scrutiny over our systems, but they held up. They found no evidence of voter fraud. no evidence that we needed more security in our absentee voting process. We also know what the effect of the new laws that are being proposed will be. Fewer eligible citizens will vote. Fewer of your constituents will be able to exercise their sacred constitutional right, or they will not be. And why? Because they don't have a printer, because they don't have a smartphone, because the post office was slow. And you know, that's a true fact. I'm still getting mail about going to vote for the November 3rd elections. Post office is slow. And all in the name of solving a so-called security problem that has been proven does not exist. It just wasn't there. Please think carefully about what side of history you're aligning yourself with when you reach for justification in the name of limiting people's right to vote. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like to take a moment to recognize a former member, but more importantly, the person in charge of serving breakfast at the subcommittee PROPS meetings this morning, Mr. Don Balfour. Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to actually come down here and thank my colleague, Don Balfour, Senator Balfour. You know, I've been here for several years, and if you hear it from my opponents, it's too many years, but I had the honor of serving with two other chairman of Rules, Senator David Scott, who is a congressman now, and Senator Don Balfour, who I learned a lot. In fact, I would say that Senator Balfour molded me into the senator that I am today. So please thank him for that. But Don Balfour was a great conservative legislator here. I learned so much from him during his tenure, and he is a great man. And we're glad to have him back today. And more than that, I'm also a master of fine food. And there's no finer food in the morning than Waffle House of Georgia, which I think is Georgia's Welcome Centers. And we thank him for furnishing food to many offices today, and of course, especially subcommittees of appropriations that's doing the work for the people of Georgia. Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 50th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning. I rise today to recognize two great institutions, the Georgia Institute of Technology and North Georgia Health Systems, and thank them for the work that they are doing in helping the legislators do COVID testing. I think they're a true example of a community partnership. I'm a proud alumni of Georgia Institute of Technology, and I'm pleased to be joined by two other alumni in this chamber. And if you see anyone from Georgia Tech or North Georgia Health System, please thank them for all the work that they're doing. I yield the well.
Keep down the disruption in the chambers, please. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd. Moving on.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. This week I introduced Senate Bill 38, a bill which would create a permanent absentee voter list that every Georgia voter could sign up for. Under our current law, voters who have disabilities, live overseas, or are over 65 years old can fill out a single application to receive all primary, general, and runoff election ballots by mail during a given election cycle. Voters who don't fit into these select categories must continuously apply for an absentee ballot for each election, which is confusing and time-consuming for voters and doubles or even triples the workload and financial cost to county election offices. My bill would reduce the burden that our current system places upon voters and election workers alike by allowing voters to sign up once and automatically receive an absentee ballot for each election. During the 2020 election cycle, access to mail-in voting was particularly urgent. In the early, scary days of the pandemic, we didn't want to ask voters to choose between their health and their right to vote. Many experienced but elderly poll workers were unable to staff polls due to health concerns. Polling location closures and the need to physically distance and clean voting equipment added new delays, all while we were first rolling out a complex new voting machine system for the first time in many years. Having more Georgians vote by mail during this unprecedented time provided a lifeline for our election system to run. The logistical issues we faced during the primary, including lines of more than 5 hours, would have been far worse without the option to vote by mail. Over 1.2 million Georgians voted early for the June election, and a majority of those votes were cast absentee by mail. Many of us have been fighting for greater access to mail-in voting for years. Expanding access to mail-in voting allows more Georgians to exercise their constitutional right to vote. We want every eligible voter to cast his or her vote so that our elected representatives do, in fact, represent the will of the people. That is the founding principle of our democracy. And the people do not exclusively consist of those among us who have access to a car or another form of transportation to take them to the polls. Those of us in this chamber take this privilege for granted, but there are many Georgians that don't have that luxury. The people shouldn't exclude Georgians who can't take time off work, don't have a car, parents with young children whose childcare responsibilities make it more difficult for them to go to the polls. And the people also should not and cannot mean only those who have access to scanners and printers. The creation of a permanent absentee voter list would dramatically reduce the administrative burden we place on election offices, and it also allows them to plan ahead and direct resources appropriately. Each time a voter submits an absentee ballot application, an election worker must process and validate that application before sending a ballot in return. With 7.3 million registered voters in Georgia, 10% requesting absentee ballots for an election, that is 2.2 million applications. Think of all the time and money that we would save by expanding the permanent absentee list. Senate Bill 38 would open voting to more citizens and cost the state less time and money. The right to vote is sacred, and let us never forget that access to the vote is a right, not a privilege for politicians to decide whether to grant or withhold. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the Majority Leader for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I've kept quiet over the last little bit when people come up and you say whatever you want in points of personal privilege. What I would caution is let's not do ready, fire, aim on potential legislation that's coming through. Let's actually wait till a bill is dropped and then condemn it, rather than condemning it before one ever reaches the Secretary of the Senate's office. Let's not assume that just because there is a difference in parties that the other side is wrong. We have a whole process that we go through. We have a committee process, then every committee that we have that is going to deal with these issues is bipartisan. You will have the opportunity to bring up any issues that you have during that process. And you know, after it goes out of the process, and if it gets off the floor here by the requisite vote, it's still got to go through another chamber and start the process all over again. Let us be the mature body that actually reads the stuff that's coming before us, make the changes that are the most effective for the citizens of Georgia, and then move forward. Other than that, say whatever you want on points of personal privilege. I yield the well.
You have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. For what purpose? He waives. Just testing me. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair sees none. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you, Mr. Secretary. Are there any objections filed to any bill on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, no objections have been filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on State and Local Government Operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? Chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. The question is on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, will you please close the machine? On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 46, the nays are 0. The bills on the local consent calendar, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. What purpose does the senator from the 54th rise?
Mr. President, I move that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 61 to the House.
Senator from the 54th has asked that the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 61 to the House. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the bill is immediately transmitted to the House. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on Monday, February 1st, 2021.
Mr. Secretary, please read the announcements.
Senate Committee on Rules will meet upon adjournment in 450 of the Capitol. Senate Committee on Appropriations Subcommittee, Education and Higher Education, will meet at 1 p.m. in Mezzanine 1. The Appropriations Subcommittee of Community Health will meet at 1 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. The Appropriations Subcommittee on Public Safety will meet at 2 p.m. in Mezzanine 1. And the Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation will meet at 2 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. Thank you, please, the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Majority Whip for an announcement.
If you are on my subcommittee for transportation, please come to the meeting at 2. Otherwise, we may cut all the road projects out of your district next year. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a brief announcement that I'll be having a forum on this upcoming Monday, February 1st. The guest for this forum is Dr. Michael Sparer. He is a professor and the chair of health policy at Columbia University's School of Public Health. He is very excited to come and speak with legislators and community members about the history of Medicare, Medicaid, the ACA, and just explain sort of how it's come about, how it's evolved. It is a nonpartisan event, and he is coming so that he can help us have a very informed, educated, high-quality discussions as we move into the meat of this legislative session, as we just come to discuss health policy. Everyone's welcome. I will send out an email. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Are there any additional announcements that stand between us and the weekend? The chair sees none. The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Monday, February 1st, 2021 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. The Senate stands adjourned. Have a great weekend.